The year was 480 BC, when Western civilization was still just in its cradle. During the Greco-Persian Wars, the Persian Achaemenid Empire, the largest empire to have ever existed at this point, was determined to invade and conquer Greece. Unlike the Persians, Greece was not a single unified nation, but was divided into hundreds of small Greek city-states, the most powerful of these, Athens and Sparta. Sparta was an early example of a constitutional government. Its society existed unchanged for almost 750 years. In Spartan society, the only career open to a man was that of a soldier. Agriculture, commerce, and material were provided by the peoples that Sparta defended and protected. From the age of 7 until the age of 60, a Spartan male was trained to excel in combat. He could marry at 20, but he had to live and sleep in the military barracks until he was 30. Only then was he considered a man who could live in his own home. But even then, he had to take his meals with his fellow soldiers until he was 60. None in the ancient world were as disciplined and as physically fit as the Spartan warrior. In addition to being physically fit, the Spartans constantly practiced warfare. They had many special formations and fighting techniques. The military was their occupation, and warfare was their art. The distinguishing insignia of the Spartan warrior was the Greek letter lambda, which was prominently displayed on his shield. In the ceremony wherein a Spartan male became a soldier, his mother presented him with his shield, and she told him, "Return victorious from battle with this shield, or dead upon it." Sparta's discipline and loyalty to the state was matched by none. Their culture was highly traditionalist. They had no grand visions of empire building, but were fierce protectors of their homeland. The Spartan society stood in stark contrast to their main rival, Athens. Sparta had a martial society with an economy based on farming and conquering, while Athens was a more open society based on trade. They valued art and culture and for a time were ruled under a form of democracy. The Spartan-Athenian rivalry was fierce, but a time was coming when Sparta and Athens would be forced to unite against a common enemy. In 492 BC, the Persian King Darius I launched an invasion of Greece, reconquered Thrace, and forced Macedon into becoming a client kingdom of Persia. The invasion was launched to punish the Greeks for the Ionian Revolt, an uprising against Persian rule, which the Athenians and other Greeks had supported. Darius sent emissaries to all the Greek city-states in 491, asking for a gift of earth and water as tokens of their submission to him. The majority of Greek cities submitted. In Athens, however, the Persian ambassadors were put on trial and then executed by throwing them in a pit. The Spartans, as portrayed in popular culture, simply threw them down a well. A Greek coalition force led by the Athenians then won a crushing victory over the Persian army at the Battle of Marathon, turning back the invaders temporarily. King Darius returned to Asia and died shortly after this. His son, Xerxes, then took his place on the throne. According to Herodotus, after putting down a revolt in Egypt, Xerxes held a special assembly of the noblest among the Persians. And he told them, quote, "I have now summoned you together that I may impart to you what I intend to do. It is my intent to bridge the Hellespont and lead my army through Europe to Hellas, so that I may punish the Athenians for what they have done to the Persians and to my father. On his behalf, and that of all the Persians. I will never rest until I have taken Athens and burnt it. In 480 BC, the Persian king Xerxes set out to conquer Europe with an army that by some estimates amounted to 1 million men, with a navy more precisely numbered at 1,207 ships. Every civilized nation, from the Indus Valley, across the Tigris and the Euphrates, to the banks of the Nile and the straits of the Bosphorus, was under the rule of Persia. Only the straits of the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles and the courage of the Greek city-states stood in the way of total Persian dominion over the entire civilized world. The Athenians lacked the manpower to fight on both land and sea. They realized that fighting the Persians would require an alliance of Greek city-states. In 481, Xerxes sent ambassadors around Greece requesting tribute, but he very deliberately omitted Athens and Sparta. Thus, support for resistance began to gather around these two leading states. A congress of Greek city-states met at Corinth in the autumn of 481, and a Greek alliance was formed. Many historians believe that if the Persians succeeded in taking Greece, it is possible they would have then gone on to conquer the entire known world. According to Herodotus, a renegade Spartan told King Xerxes before the battle, quote, "Know this, if you subjugate these men and those who have remained behind in Sparta, there is no other race of human beings that will be left to raise their hands against you. For you are now attacking the most noble kingdom of all the Hellenes and the best of men." The Greek strategy put forth by Themistocles would require the Persian army to travel through the very narrow 50-foot wide mountain pass of Thermopylae. Meanwhile, to prevent the Persians from bypassing Thermopylae by sea, the Athenian and allied navies would block the Straits of Artemisium. The pass was surrounded by high cliffs to the south and the Malian Gulf to the north. Hot springs bubbled out of the cliffs where the pass was narrowest, giving Thermopylae its name, the Hot Gates. Greece was in the midst of a religious holiday, and many believed that to march to battle during that time would mean incurring the wrath of the gods. However, one of Sparta's two kings, Leonidas, realized that unless the Persian army was quickly stalled at Thermopylae, Greece was doomed. By law, he could take 300 Spartans wherever he went. So he selected the 300 best warriors in all of Sparta with one stipulation. Each soldier selected had at least one living son born into his household. Facing overwhelming odds, King Leonidas realized that he and his men may never return alive. The Oracle of Delphi prophesied that either Sparta must be overthrown by the barbarians or one of her kings must perish. The prophecy declared, quote, "O ye men who dwell in the streets of broad Lacedaemon, either your glorious town shall be sacked by the children of Perseus, or in exchange must all through the whole Laconian country mourn for the loss of a king, descendant of great Hercules. He cannot be withstood by the courage of bulls nor lions. Strive as they may, he is mighty as Zeus, and there is naught that shall stay him, till he have got for his prey your king, or your glorious city." The 300 Spartans, led by their king Leonidas, set off to meet the mighty Persian army and marched on Thermopylae. On their way to Thermopylae, the Spartans gathered as many volunteers as they could, and by the time they arrived at the pass, approximately 7,000 other Greek volunteers had joined them. Despite this, the Persian army was massive and still outnumbered the Greeks immensely. William Golding, in his essay, The Hot Gates, describes the Persian Leviathan that met Leonidas and his men at the pass. Quote, "No man has ever seen anything like this army before. It was patently unstoppable. It came along the neck of the hills and the banks of the Asopus, from the heights of the mountain and along the coastal track from Alope and Phalara, lengthening rivers of men, Persians in fish-scale armor, turbaned Scythians, bronze-clad Assyrians, trousers Scythians, Indian bowmen, Casbians, Sarangians in bright cloth and high-heeled boots, came down and spread in a flood that filled the plain. Soon there was nothing to see but rising clouds of white dust, pierced and speckled with the flicker of steel. If each of the 7,000 Greeks would kill his 10 men, there would be more than enough to press forward, and this was only the vanguard. At their back, stretching for league after league by the Mounts Pelion and Ossa, back through the narrow gorge of the Peneus to the wide plain beneath Olympus, marched the main body of the Persian war machine. Arabs in robes and Africans in leopard skins, leather-clad Libyans, Thracians with headdresses of fox pelt, Pisidians with their ox-hide shields, Alaradians, Saspires, and Medes, and horses and oxen and mules. There were 80,000 mounted bowmen and lancers, and chariots in a swarm no one could count. When that assembly of nations heaved itself off the earth and marched, the ground shuddered like the head of a drum. When that assembly came to a swift Greek river and halted for miles along the bank to drink, the waters shrank to a few pools of mud. This was the army that seeped and flooded into the valley all day, and halted under its own dust before the narrow entrance of the hot gates. Seeing their path blocked by the Spartans, King Xerxes sent a message to the Spartans, demanding, quote, "Lay down your weapons." The Spartans replied, quote, "Come and take them." The Persians waited for 4 days before attacking. Xerxes expected them to run away at any minute, but they did not leave. On the 5th day, he became angry and sent 10,000 Medes and Scythians against them, bidding them to take the Spartans prisoner and bring them to him. During the first day of battle, the Spartan-led forces, fighting in relays, fought brutally and inflicted heavy casualties on the Persian army. As Golding observed, quote, "The 300 Spartans were calm, even cheerful. They were soldiers, and nothing but soldiers, and this is what they were for." Nothing could break the Spartans. Although the Persian war machine possessed so many men, they could not use their superior numbers because of the narrow pass. And they were no match for the Spartan infantry. The Spartans and Greeks used a battle formation called a phalanx, essentially a wall of spears and interlaced shields. It was designed to be impenetrable. A typical phalanx was about 16 ranks deep and 64 men wide. The Greeks fighting at the front of the formation would continually rotate, switching places with those men in the back in order to prevent fatigue. Using this system, the Spartans could hold the pass indefinitely. The Greeks killed so many Medes in the first wave that Xerxes is said to have stood up 3 times from his seat from which he was watching the battle. Frustrated that the Spartans still held the pass, the Persian king then decided to send his personal bodyguard, an elite corps of 10,000 troops known as the Immortals. According to Herodotus, the Immortals fared no better than the Persian regulars, since they used shorter spears than the Greeks and could not use their numbers fighting in the narrow space. When the Persians could gain no inch of the pass, they withdrew. When Xerxes saw that his elite troops had failed, he jumped from his throne in fear, anger, and agony. On the second day, Xerxes again sent his infantry to attack the pass, assuming that the Spartans were close to defeat. However, the Persians again were beaten back. They had no more success on the second day than on the first. Totally perplexed, Xerxes at last stopped the assault and withdrew to his camp. Later that evening, a Greek trader, Ephialtes, approached Xerxes and told him of a little-known, high, narrow mountain trail that led around the pass of Thermopylae. Xerxes eagerly sent a Persian contingent through the trail, and in the morning of the third day, the Greeks woke up to see that the Persians had now appeared behind them. The Spartans, were now surrounded. Leonidas saw that the situation was now lost and ordered those who were not Spartans to depart. All of the Greek troops obeyed this command, except for the Boeotians, who refused to leave. The Athenian navy, anchored in the Gulf waters on the north shore of the pass, offered to evacuate the Spartan troops and their allies, but Leonidas refused. At the beginning of the third day, the Spartans and their brave allies fought fiercely. Leonidas went on the offensive and ordered the Greek forces to fight until they killed Xerxes. Ultimately, the Spartan king, fighting in the front line, fell dead in battle. Xerxes ordered his men to bring him Leonidas' head on a pike, but the Spartans, wanting to give their king a proper burial, refused to give up his body. A desperate skirmish broke out over control of Leonidas' body. The Spartans retreated to the high ground of a mound of earth near the entrance to the pass. Xerxes offered to let the Spartans go if they would give up the body of their king. The Spartans refused the offer. The Persian messenger emphasized that if they do not surrender, they would surely die. The Spartans replied, "We will die, but Greece will live." The Persian messenger then said that his army had enough archers to blot out the sun with arrows, to which the Spartans quipped, "Then we will fight in the shade." The messenger then asked if they had any last words they wanted delivered to their people. The Spartan commander replied, "Go tell the Spartans that we died here, obedient to their laws." That afternoon, all 300 Spartans, every last man, perished. They fought to the death, fighting with everything they had. The Persians did not fight hand to hand during the last moments of the battle. Instead, Xerxes ordered his infantry to stay back, and Persian archers rained down arrows until every last Greek was dead. The precise number of Persian casualties will never be known, but it was in the tens of thousands. Herodotus put the total number of Persian dead at 20,000 and the number of Greeks killed at 4,000. An unknown Greek author wrote, quote, "When on a razor's edge all Hellas stood, we who lie here preserved her with our blood." Following Thermopylae, the city of Athens was evacuated. The Persian army proceeded to sack and burn Plataea and Thesbiae before it marched on the now evacuated city of Athens and sacked that city as well. Word quickly spread in Greece of the heroic last stand of the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, and King Leonidas became a martyr. The Battle of Thermopylae stalled the Persian advance long enough for the assembly of a combined Greek force which defeated the Persian navy at Salamis and Mycale and the Persian army at Plataea. The memory of the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae was so fearsome that when the Persian army engaged the thousands of Spartan hoplites at Plataea, many Persians broke ranks in panic and ran, fleeing the field of battle. The Greeks pursued Xerxes and his troops across Greece as the mighty Persian war machine swiftly retreated to Asia. Greece had triumphed. A heroic last stand at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, as well as the battles of Plataea, Salamis, and Mycale, occurred only 30 years before the dawn of the golden age of Athens. What would Western civilization be like if not for their sacrifice? Without the culture emerging in Athens after 480 BC, it is possible there would have been no Socrates to inspire the development of classical philosophy. Plato's Academy would have never existed, nor would Aristotle's Lyceum. Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, may have been forgotten, fading into the abyss of time. Euripides would not have written his plays, nor would Euclid have developed his geometry. Who would have discovered the engineering principles of Archimedes, and when? Herodotus and Thucydides may have never developed the modern approach to historical inquiry, and historians would have written a completely different history. Athenian trade, commerce, and wealth would have never reached its zenith in the 5th century BC. Democracy would have been eradicated instead of reaching its pinnacle during the era of Pericles around 460 BC. The Parthenon would have never been erected. Alexander the Great would have never conquered Persia, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. The Library of Alexandria would have never even existed. Would the Persian war machine have marched through Europe and conquered the Roman Republic before it became an empire? Would Carthage have fallen to Xerxes instead of Scipio, and Hannibal never have been born? Without classical Greece, what would serve as Rome's cultural inspiration? How would England, France, Spain, Portugal, and many other countries be like if they were never Roman provinces? How would Viking, Celtic, German, and Tartar culture be changed if the Persian Empire were at their frontiers instead of Rome? How could there be a Renaissance in Europe without classical Greece and Rome to serve as the inspiration? What would America be like without Anglo-Saxon, Greco-Roman influence on Jefferson, Franklin, Hamilton, Washington, and the other founding fathers? The decision of one man to stand and fight changed the course of human history. The French author and philosopher Montaigne observed, quote, "The worth and value of a man is in his heart and in his will. There lies his real honor. Valor is the strength not of legs and arms, but of heart and soul. He who falls obstinate in his courage, if he has fallen, he fights on his knees. He who relaxes none of his assurances, no matter how great the danger of imminent death, who, giving up his soul, still looks firmly and scornfully at his enemy, he is beaten, not by us, but by fortune. He is killed, not conquered." It is a tragic fact that the most valiant are sometimes the most unfortunate. Thus there are triumphant defeats that rival victories. Thermopylae is one of these defeats. It is a story that has echoed throughout history and served as a source of inspiration that few can stand against many. This is why, to paraphrase Montaigne, Salamis, Plataea, Mycale, and Sicily are the fairest sister victories which the sun has ever seen. Yet they would never dare to compare their combined glory with the glory of the annihilation of King Leonidas and his men at the pass of Thermopylae.